Acts 27, verses 39 to chapter 28, verse 10. Shipwrecked on Malta. We've left in the last section where the ship is really close to some land because they did a sounding with the line with the little markers on it. Mark Twain, he was a writer in the United States, and his name is actually Samuel Clemens, and it came from his days of being a worker on tugboats on the Mississippi River, and they would sound for depth, see how far they were. Called it a Mark Twain. I'm not exactly sure why the Twain too, but this is what was going on here. So they're now within 90 feet of depth, and they're close to this island, and they're anchored so they won't be pushed onto the island at night, middle of a storm, because it says here it was still raining when they were finally shipwrecked. In verse 39, it starts, Ote the imaran ageneto, then when it became day, tingin uk epeginoskon. They recognized not the land. A kolpon they tina kata noun ech konta a yalon. But they contemplated a certain bay having a shore, the rocky cliffs probably, and all of a sudden they see an area that's sort of open where it has a beach, where I live, right on the Pacific Ocean. Right behind me, 100 feet, is the ocean, and there's a nice beach there somebody could put a boat upon, which they have at different times under bad circumstances, drinking too much, falling asleep, coming ashore with a big fishing boat. And so here they're close and they could see that they could possibly make it to shore somehow. It continues, Is on evulev santo e dinaton exose toplion, on which they consulted if they were able to thrust the boat. Well, the wind would be the thrusting, but be it as it may, verse 40, Ketas ankyros perielontes, eon istin thalassine, and having removed the anchors, they gave up unto the sea. So they were hooked into the sea with these anchors, if you remember from the last section, a couple of them, so that they wouldn't go. But now they've released these anchors, and so now they're open to having whatever the wind would do. Then ama anentes tas zev kiterias ton pedalion, together having unfastened the tillers of the rudder. Here's a picture of a ship called the Corvita. It was a Roman ship. And here a rudder is what guides a boat. The rudder's in the back here, it doesn't have a very good picture, but it goes like this, back and forth. And when you turn it this way, then the boat goes to the left, and you turn it to the right, it goes the opposite. But here, this is a modern sailboat like I had, but these had two rudders like that, and something connecting them, probably because it was a large ship, and they're on one side and can control the one rudder, or on the other side, control the other side on steering the ship. They may have had a couple of steermen. It doesn't say, but basically the rudder is what's in the water, and the tiller is this handle up here that they use, and when they pull it, then the rudder turns. It's attached directly to it. Now, modern sailboats, of course, have wheels, which the wheel turns and it'll turn the rudder, or a motor could be what's used to turn some boats, not generally sailboats, but the motor keeps the sailboat going, but it still has a rudder and it has a rudder anyway. It may or may not have a tiller. If it doesn't have the tiller, then it has the wheel. And while you've seen old pictures of the old ships whaling ships, and now they had wheels then, which did the same thing. It turned the rudder, and they didn't have motors. So these are the ways of controlling the boat. And it continues, ke eparantes ton artemona te pnoisi, and having lifted up the mainsail to the blow. So now the mainsail was down because they didn't want to get pushed onto this land, so they pulled the sails down. It was just bare, and now they want to go on the land because they've released the anchors, so they lift up the sail, and the wind is apparently blowing on shore. And so the wind blows this boat, and katikon is ton agialon, and they held for the shore. So they had they didn't have the rudders anymore. They didn't have the tiller to control it, but somehow it was headed for the shore with this wind. Verse 41, peripesontes they istopon the thalasan, and having fallen into a place between two seas. And that is a bay. The bay is inside, and you have seas on both sides, more or less. And epok kalan tin nav, and the ship ran aground. So now, this doesn't mean they're on the island. The island could be up here, and there's a slight slope, and here's the water, and there's a slight slope going down, and that ship could have ran aground way up here, and they had maybe 100 feet or something like that to swim to shore. And so this is a case in this instance here. Ke imen prora erisasa, and the prow having struck. And the prow is the front of a boat, the bow, prow, having stuck. Eminen asalevtos, it remained unshaken. But the prow it's stuck in the ground, in the sand. Ide primna eliato hypotis vias ton kimaton, but the stern, that is the end of the boat, was loose by the force of the waves. So this boat is going back and forth. It's stuck, but the winds push it and it'll move, and then it moves like that. And they're 100 feet out or more, it doesn't say, from the actual land. And this is where they're at. And it says in verse 42, ton de strateoton vuli agenato inatus des motas apokatinosi. And the soldiers' plan became that they should kill the prisoners. Mitis ekolibrisas diaphigi, lest any having swam should have escaped. And if they escaped, then they could lose their lives as soldiers, so they want to kill the prisoners. Verse 43, O de ekatontakros vulomenos, but the centurion, wanting the asose ton Pavlon, to save Paul. Now here, save isn't a different word. It's not what we had before. Salvation, sozo, to save, but this is dia, sose. It's close to it. We have the sose, but the dia, to save Paul. Ekoli son avtus to vulimatos. He restrained them of their will. Ekelev se te tus dinamenus koim van, and bid the ones able to swim aporipsantas protus, having thrown themselves off first, epitegin exiene, to exit into the land. So if you could swim, jump ashore and go ashore. Verse 44, ketus lipus, and the rest, us men epi sanisin, some indeed upon planks of wood that they had on the boat, os they epi tinon ton apo to pliu, and others upon some of the things from the boat, ke utos agenato pantas diasothene epi to gain. And so it came to pass, all came forth through safe unto the land. All these people, just as God told Paul would happen. In chapter 28, begins in 1, diasothentes, and having come through safe, tote epignoson, then they knew, otimeliti, enisos kalite, that the island is called Malta. We're going to go to a map. Now here's the map, and you can see, and they come across, and there's Malta close to Sicily, and Italy is right up above. So they're almost to Rome. Verse 2, Ide varvari parikon utin tikuson philanthropion emin, and the barbarians furnished not the happened by chance humane treatment to us. Barbaros, the barbarians were basically anybody that didn't speak Greek. The Greeks considered them barbaros. Here, barbari. We have barbarians today. These were, like, at the time would have been people like in Albania and places around Greece that weren't actual Greeks, speaking other languages. And now these people were way over on a little island out in the middle of the Mediterranean. So they were called barbarians. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just trying to describe what kind of people they were. We call somebody a barbarian today. It has a very negative connotation, but not then, apparently. And they furnished not the happened by chance. It wasn't just they come along. They planned on dealing with these shipwrecked people with humane treatment. Philanthropion, we have philanthropy as the English derivative from that word to us. Anapsantes gar piran, for having lit a bonfire. So they knew that they're all wet and cold, and they lit a bonfire for them. Proselavonto pontus imas, they took all of us unto themselves. And there's 275 people. Iaton ephestota, because of the rain having attended. So it's still raining. A storm is still going on even when they're coming ashore. And diato psychos, and because of the chilliness, taking care of them. Sistrepsantos, they, to Pavlu, phryganon plethos, and Paul, having bundled up a multitude of sticks, so they're going around picking up wood that they could burn, helping. Ke epithentos epi tin piron, and having placed them upon the bonfire, echidna ectis thermis, the excelthosa, a viper, having gone completely through from the heat, kathipse tis hieros of two, clinched on to his hand. Now, people have written that there was no snakes, serpents on Malta, so anyone that would bite, so they try to nullify the truth of the Bible. But actually this word, echidna, I'm going to change it. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be, but an echidna to those people there is a mythological monster. Did have a head of it like a human, a woman, and a body of a serpent, of a snake. But the general word for a serpent, snake, is ophis. Appears many, many times in the Bible, number 3789. And so you see and you know that this is a snake. But not so with echidna. It says in Matthew 3:7 by Jesus, offspring of echidna. Offspring of, now vipers, I'm not exactly sure what else I could use. It's sort of like a beast or some kind of a creature, something that bites. And it also appears in Matthew 12:34 and Luke 3:7, offspring of vipers. And in Matthew 23:33, it differentiates the ophis and the echidna because it says, serpents, offspring of vipers. To the Pharisees and Sadducees, Jesus is saying, how should you flee from the judgment of Gehenna? So ophis, serpents, is the first word, and then echidna. So you can see there's a difference between the two. It's not a serpent. And exactly what it was, it's some type of an animal that bit him. That's the best we could go. It went completely through, it clinched onto his hand. Os theidon I vavri, krima menon to theorion ek tis hieros avtu, and when the barbarians beheld the beast hanging from his hand, elegompros alilus, they said to one another, pantos phonefs estin o anthropos utos, surely this man's a murderer. On diasothenta ek tis thalasis, who having been delivered from out of the sea, idiki zin uk iasen, diki, allowed not to live. But now it talks about diki. Now, dice, it looks in the English, but it's actually diki, and pronounced diki, and diki was a daughter of Zeus, and was considered in Greek mythology the goddess of justice. So these people here, the barbarians, of course, believing in the Greek mythology, attributed Dike, goddess of justice, to affect Paul's life, that he would die. Omen un, he indeed then, apotix naxos, to theorion, is topir, having brushed off the beast. Now this is not echidna, so we see it's a beast. If it was a serpent, then I would think it would have used ophis, but it doesn't. So I don't believe it is a serpent. But anyway, he brushed whatever it was into the fire. Epathin uthen kakon. He suffered no hurt. Ide prosodokon avton melin pimprasthai. But the ones were expecting him to be about to become inflamed. E katapiptin afno necron, or to fall down suddenly dead. And epi poli they avton prosdokonton ketheorunton mi then atopon is avton ginomenon. But for a long time of their expecting and viewing that nothing out of place was happening to him, metavalomeni elegon, theon afton ine, they changing their minds, said him to be a god. He was considered a god in another place, for it was Ephesus or Philippi, I think maybe it was Philippi, and he ends up getting beat up, so not a good thing in the long run, expecting somebody to be so special as a god. Verse 7, and they tis peri ton topon akinon, ipirke horia to proto tis nisu. And in the parts around that place existed a place belonging to the a prototype, the first, foremost man of the isle, and I added man. Onomate Poplio, not Pope Leo, but it's Pope Leo, Publius in English, and what they have given his name. Os anadexamenos imas, who having received us, tris imeris Philophronas exenison. 3 days he obligingly lodged us. Now, I added us. Who was there to be lodged? It was just the important people. Don't know. Verse 8, Ageneto they ton patera to Poplio, and it happened the father of Publius, Piratis, ke dysenteria, synechomenon, katakiste. And it happened the father of Publius reclined with fevers and constrained dysentery. Dysentery, if you don't know what it is a release of the bowels constantly. It never stops. You have to go big every 5 or 10 minutes. Takes all the water out of your body. And if you have a fever with it, you're really sick. And I went down to Mexico with my friend Tom when I was 19 years old. We drove down there from St. Louis to Mazatlan, Mexico, and eating the food there, we both got dysentery at the same time, some type of amoeba attacks. And once you get it, you won't get it again. It makes you're immune to it again. But when you get it, you're really sick. Being 19 years old and strong and healthy, we made it through it, but it was really it was pretty bad. If you're an adult and that happens and you're someplace, then you would seek medical attention and they would give something that would counteract that amoeba or that bacteria, whatever it is in there that's causing it, and kill it, and you would get better. But some people die. This person here was very, very sick, father of Popliu. And then continues, pros on o Pavlos, a selthon of whom Paul having entered, K prosevxamenos, having prayed, epithes tas hieras avto, having placed the hands on him, easato avton, healed him. So God gave the power of healing to Paul, who puts his hands on the man, and he is healed. Tutu un genomenu, then this having taken place, ke lipi e echontes asthenias intiniso, also the rest having sicknesses in the island, prosir konto, came forward, ke etherapev onto, and were cured. So now people on the island see the power of Paul and probably Aristarchus. They're amazed. It says in 10, Ike poles times epimisan imas, who also with much honor esteemed us. Ke anagomenes epithento ta pros tin krian, and embarking they placed the things for our need. So when they were ready to leave to go to Italy, they gave them whatever they needed, apparently. And we'll go to that in our next section, which I think is going to be the last in Acts, Paul's arrival at Rome.